I'd like to say a few words about identification. Identification is a derivative. In other words, identification is a byproduct of another process. We mistakenly regard identification as something that we do. In other words, that I identify with someone or something. But the fact of the matter is, I do not identify. I am identified. Identification isn't something that I'm doing. Identification is happening to me. The physical body sets the stage for identification. There's an organization of energy within this physical body that is what constitutes my being, my sense of being present. And thoughts constitute a subtle form of energy. The thought process is a subtle organization of the energy of which I consist. Thought is a developmental stage in a larger process of development. The stage of development in which thought exists for the vast majority of the human race is what I refer to as chronic thought. Thought is involuntary, mechanical, continuous, compulsive, automatic, and unconscious. That is our current given state of mind. I call it chronic thought. Associative thinking, if you like. Chronic thought generates identification. The self-reference, I, is the center of identification. Chronic thought generates a legion of self-references, and each self-reference, each center, is vested with a measure of the energy of which I consist. Each center is a center of gravity within the being that I am. Each center is a point of view, a separative perspective, consisting of reflections on the past, projections into the future, ideas, and hopes, fears, desires, the whole gamut of negative emotions. So identification is generated by chronic thought. Chronic thought generates a multitude of identities, identifications, attachments, negative emotions, the psychological paradigm of separation, and all of the problems, internal and external, that the paradigm of separation produces. Look into yourself and discover the cause of identification. Trace back negative emotions and attachments to their source in identification. Recognize a multitude of identifications. Recognize their source in the mechanical and continuous thought process. Now, any given identification exercises very little control over thought because, frankly, thinker is thought. The thinker, the identified self, does not possess the power to stop thinking. What exists prior to thought is the whole being that I am. And that whole being that I am begins as the vestigial sense of being present, my rudimentary consciousness, but it is larger than thought. One can say that it exists in a level of my being greater than thought, prior to thought, larger than thought. And from that level of my being, I possess the capacity to stop chronic thought. Paying attention means exercising the capacity of my being to stop thinking and to thereby increase my sense of being present, increase consciousness. Divesting energy from thought and reinvesting that energy into the sum of who I am, thereby creating a new function of the mind that isn't thinking, but that is instead continuous being.